Welcome everybody to a behind the scenes video for football. What's a football? I'm going to be doing a couple of these as we go through this first season just to talk about what I've been doing behind the scenes in order to prepare some of what you're seeing. Today I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've done with the rosters and the recruits. So here is the active roster for every team, and you can see everybody's outlined as a 40. Now, this is pretty easy to do in this. This is the generic EA database editor. Um, there are a lot of different files that you can plug into here to edit other EA titles. I've only used this for NCAA, so I'm not really sure about any of those others, but I know they do exist. Um, but here, this is pretty easy to accomplish. There's a mass edit button, and basically just plug in what you want. You can either tell it to set it to a specific value, which is the default operation, or you can tell it to go plus minus, and you can edit values up and down that way. So this thing's going to go crazy if I don't enter something, so we'll go overall -1, and then close that window, let it do its thing. It's going to take a second, because it's got a lot of data points to go through. You can see everybody's overall dropped by 1. I don't want to keep that, and there's not an undo button, so I just basically got to go back and manually plug that back in. So plus minus, we'll add +1, and let it put that value back in. Now, as you're looking this over and as this is grinding away, there are two values here. There's this OVR value, and then there's an overall value. We'll get a little bit more into that in a second, but one of these is actually a calculated number, which is this OVR with a star next to it. This is actually calculated based off a number of weights for each category depending on position. And then this overall number is simply a number that is plugged into the database. The weird thing is that depending on what you're doing, the game might show you either of these numbers. To get a little bit more in depth with that, let's look at the recruit table. So I'm going to refresh the view to load the data in. All right, so here are all our recruits, and you can see there's a lot of information: ID, position, recruit position. So this is the position it assigns the player, and this is the position that it shows you in the recruit screen. So for example, here's an athlete. Well, this particular athlete is pegged as a strong safety, even though, you know, like if you've done anything with this before and you've done position swaps, sometimes that's not exactly where they plug in best overall wise, but this is how the game has it pegged. And the weird thing is that on the results screen from recruiting, when it tells you that you're in a recruiting battle or somebody's committed to a school, it actually shows you the position, actually shows you this column rather than just the recruit position. So you might be wondering, why do I have a strong safety targeted? Or how do I have a strong safety targeted when you didn't put any on the board? Well, that's probably an athlete who's just pegged as a strong safety. It's just one little weird thing, but I just wanted to talk about that real quick. But here's the big thing we want to look at is over here at the recruit table. Now, a couple things. First is kind of scanning over everything that everybody's got here. So here are all the stats for everybody. Some of them are hideously low, but some of them don't really apply to the position that they are assigned to. For instance, an offensive lineman isn't going to need spin move. Most likely, quarterback isn't going to need catch. But who knows? Anyway, looking at some of these, like each of these has a specific weight for each position, like speed and strength, agility, acceleration, awareness. Those all have specific designations and weights for basically every position, and then some only have weights for specific positions. So, if I have a quarterback, I could drop his if I'm looking over here, I could probably drop his power moves to 0 and his overall wouldn't take a hit because he's not expected to block anybody. Anyway, so some of these are a little bit scattershot, and you can see the values that I've set over here in this Word document here on the right. Some of them are big reductions, like up here. These are important to pretty much every position, and then some of them are fairly small reductions, like these. Now, the stats are populated in a very strange way. There are some positions where, or some stats where the numbers range the number ranges all over the place. So, for example, spin move. So for spin move, I reduced it by 13. So that means this guy's original spin move was 15. Okay. Some of them start that low. Some of them start at 20. Some of them start at 40 as a baseline. It's a little bit all over the place. So for example, this guy's carry is 20. If we look over here, I dropped carry 20. So that means his carry started at 40. And you see a lot of 20s in this field. Same thing with catch. So the way the stats are laid out are very strange. But you can only do so much here because if I were to mass edit below 0, the program yells at me. I'm not going to do that here because also when you mass edit below 0 and you hit continue, sometimes it will do the edits for basically every other player that would not drop below 0. So for example, if I put if I put -4, for instance, this wouldn't budge, but this would, and this would, and this would, and so on and so forth. I want to leave those alone for right now. So these are the edits I've put in. Now you notice down here, I've got pre-scout and overall. You might be asking yourself, why on earth would you need to shift the overall? Well, here's where the quirk comes in. So the recruit pre-scout overall. So before you do any scouting, this is the number you're shown when you look at them on the recruit screen. So you have that screen up, you're looking at the top, and you see their overall score. This is the number that the game shows you. So for example, let's look at this guy. So this is a middle linebacker. When I go to the recruit screen, he's going to show up as a 19 overall, which is insanely low. I think in all of my time of playing NCAA, I've never seen a recruit under 45 on the scout screen. I mean, here you're going to see a bunch of them, but this guy is pretty ludicrously low to begin with. So let's use him for an example. So he starts at 19. I scout him for any amount except for 100%. The game shows me, or starts to show me, this value here, the OVR with a star. This is the game calculated overall based on the stats and their weights. When you 100% recruit or 100% scout somebody, the game shows you the overall stat window here. It doesn't just revert to this and show you this. This is what it shows you when you 100% scout somebody. It shows you this total. It's a little strange, and for my purposes in scouting, I'm virtually going to be ignoring overall. I mean, it gives me a decent bearing on where maybe they fall. So, for example, this guy, he shows up as a pre-scout 52. His overall is actually 56, so before I would probably finish scouting him, he'd probably show up as a +4 at some point. And then when I 100% him, he shows up as a +2 because it goes back down, because this is the number it gives me, is that 54. Now, for guys like this, where it's 19, it starts showing me this number and then gives me this number. So that, I might question that a little bit, but then again, I'd have to go through and actually look at what's important for a middle linebacker and take those into consideration rather than looking at the overall. So when I was scanning those over, back in episode 1, I'm looking more at the individual stats it feeds me rather than anything overall. Now, some of these you'll have to kind of really watch because until you 100% scout, you obviously don't get everything. You get kind of a scatter shot. So, um, there might be some changes in the tables that I scout from, but this is kind of how things work. And this is the weird quirk about recruiting. And, this is something that if you pull this up, if you pull out the files from your 360 or your PS3 and you look at them in here, you can kind of toy with these. You can do whatever you want. There's so much stuff to do in here, and you're going to be seeing me do some of it. Some of it I've already done. So, for example, the coach data. If we look here, here are all the coaches in the game, all their names, all their team IDs, alma maters, all of um, their cosmetic settings. You can see, I mean, there's not a ton of them, but you can see that every coach in the entire league is starting on a 5-year contract. Obviously, nobody's coached. And then prior records are erased as well. These, I'm not sure how these. Oh, wait, no, never mind. That's not the stat that I was thinking it was. Those make sense. A lot of these play into um, just simming stuff, but um, we won't be looking at those too long. And then coach records. You can see everything's 0. So you can zero those out. You can look at all the place data. There's something weird in here too. So if we look at this, so these are all the cities that exist within the game in terms of places that these stadiums are located. But if we're kind of scanning over this, if you look at the news tab right here, it's just kind of been populated with this. But then it gets a little stranger. So, if I'm looking here, here's La Cruces, New Mexico. News. Go to boston.com for your local news and sources. Columbia, Missouri. Go to kansascity.com for your local news and scores. Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go to Michigan. Go to Buffalo News. So this is a very strange field, and I'm not quite sure why this field exists. Baltimore, apparently, we go to what looks like the Miami Herald. And then cities' populations are kind of all over the place. And then we just kind of stop entering data there and then down towards the bottom where every city down here is 12,000 people. It's a bit weird. I'm not sure if this was meant to be implemented, if this is like dummy data that was kind of transferred over from maybe past years and just untouched, or what the deal was, but it's very, very odd. But anyway, I'll leave you guys with this. Next video, I'll probably be talking about some of the things that go on in week 2 and week 3. But join me then, and I'll see you then.